Hello, friends, I'm Kaustubh, and I'm back with the third session in the series on the book Hind Swaraj, which is written by Mahatma Gandhi. Today, we'll be discussing Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, which deal with the partition of Bengal, the nature of Congress as an organization, and the role of foreign power in creating discontent and unrest in the country. Now, while discussing the nature of Congress, Mahatma Gandhi says, "The seed is never seen, it works underneath the ground, is itself destroyed, and the tree which rises above the ground is alone seen." Now, what is the context and what is Mahatma Gandhi trying to say? He's commenting upon the organization of Congress. He's saying that congressmen, the way they were working in a form which was hidden from public view. So the formation of Congress was just the tree that was seen. But this tree grew because of the immense work that was done before the formation of Congress by a lot of people throughout the country. Now, this understanding of Gandhi about an organization like Congress can be applied in the present context too. If you see Congress today, or if you see politics, not just Congress, any other political party, what we see is the tree. What everybody wants is the tree. But the point is, see the difference between present Congress and say the BJP. The people who are working at grassroots, the silent people, the behind the scenes people who work at the grassroots level without any aspiration of power, without any aspiration of money, these are the people who actually strengthen the organization. Now you apply this to any other organization which is working in, say, political, economic, or even social field in the country. This is the basic mantra of success for any organization which aims to bring about a change in society. This was the understanding of Gandhi, that what we see is just the face of it. There should be a lot of work which is being done and should be done at the grassroots. Now, because you want to enter administration, just think about it. The Indian system sees the civil service not as the Mai Baap image which was created by the colonial rulers of this country. According to our system, the bureaucrats are supposed to function behind the scenes, anonymous. So, this should be the strength of bureaucracy. But today, what is valued and glamorized is the Singhams and the Dabangs, which is not a very positive sign, even if you consider the interest of bureaucracy in long term. Point is, this same issue is being dealt with by Administrative Reforms Commission, and even if you read the recent book by Vijay Kelkar sir and Ajay Shah sir, In the Service of Republic, they speak about a very important aspect, that in India, what we see at the cutting edge, the bureaucrats, they are not backed up by the backstage reform, the backstage research that should be done. What we see only is action on the ground. So, the system in India is jumping from crisis to crisis. It is jumping from one urgent issue to another urgent issue without actually working on the process, without actually focusing on what is important. So, we can take a message out of this message of Gandhi, that any organization, especially the bureaucracy in the present context, should have not only teeth but a lot of tail. So, there should be a lot of people who are working behind the scenes and giving research inputs, data, objective analysis to the bureaucrats, so that the policies which are formed and which are implemented are informed by data and objective analysis. Right? Now, when discussing about the methods of Congress, especially during the partition time, there's a lot of debate between moderates and extremists. Now, in this book, Hind Swaraj, Gandhi does speak about this dichotomy, this division of Congresses into moderates and extremists, as they were called. Here, applying the same theory, Gandhiji says that it depends on a perception of a person. Moderates and extremists, basically, these are the terms which are given by people according to their own behavior or intention or the way they see the freedom movement should be. Basically, if you apply the theory that how the people contributed to freedom struggle, then extremists or the frustration that the extremists felt with the British rule can itself be interpreted as a result of the ground that was created by the moderates gradually over a period of time. So basically, if we understand the context in which the moderates operated, they were very correct in their methods to generate discontent, to generate unrest within the people. And then the result of this unrest was the cropping up of extremists which were frustrated because of the slow movement towards freedom. So these are two sides of the same coin. You cannot just divide them into two parts. Right? So that was the understanding of Gandhi. And then he says that after the partition, people saw petitions must be backed up by force. So just the method of petition did not work, and then people understood that it should be backed up by force and that they must have the capability to suffer. Now, how the partition could result into this failing? Now, this is explained in the book by two ways, right? So, for example, foreign rule, the British rule, it operates in two ways. One, just the presence of an oppressor, the British in India, created conditions which made people to value freedom, because the way British discriminated against them, exploited them, generated a lot of frustration, and this led to discontent. Second, this discontent against the foreign rule was also the result of conscious effort that was made by people at the grassroots. This was done by highlighting the fundamental difference in the interests between the earlier rulers who came to India, maybe the Sultanate, the Mughals, and so on. They stayed here. It was not the case with British. British rule was fundamentally different. How? The British did not come to stay in India. They were not interested in India. They were interested in India's wealth, and they were interested in draining this wealth back to their nation. They were not here to value our culture. They were not here to learn or be a part of it. Plus, one major difference was that earlier rulers did not at any time interfere in the personal lives or the grassroots systems, the village self-sufficiency, the social, economical, political structure that existed at the grassroots, that were not disturbed by the earlier powers. The British, on the other hand, right from the way they implemented land revenue, the way they brought about various legislations, though some of them led to good positive social change, but majority actions of the British led to destruction at the grassroots of not only the polity, economy and society, right, but individual dignity also. So because of this, a lot of discontent was generated by the people who worked at grassroots and brought these issues to the surface. This discontent against the foreign rule, then channelized properly, results into independence. Now that is what we see what happened during the partition of Bengal. According to Gandhiji, the real awakening took place after partition. Why? Because the way Lord Curzon operated, that united the nation and people started demanding the abrogation of partition. And Gandhiji interprets this demand for abrogation as an expression of sovereignty. So when people started demanding that the British cancel or annul the partition of Bengal, it itself was expression of their sovereignty, their desire to be ruled by as per their own wishes. That it was a clear message to the British that you cannot bring about a change in our country without our permission, or we will not allow you to make such changes. So this expression was in itself interpreted by Gandhiji as a demand for home rule, an expression of sovereignty on the part of Indians. Next, when we speak about unrest or this discontent which was generated because of British rule, Gandhiji says that any unrest in reality is discontent. Discontent is only described by the British as unrest. Why? It suits them. It allows them to respond to discontent in a violent manner if it is characterized as unrest. Discontent is very useful thing. Now this is very interesting point that Gandhiji is making in this book. He says discontent is a very useful thing. Every reform must be preceded by discontent. Now these two lines are crucial if you focus on the meaning, the deep meaning that Gandhiji is trying to convey. Just look at the freedom struggle. A lot of work was being done at the grassroots. Even before the work was being done, every person, whatsoever profession the person belonged to, was not happy with the British. Some or the other way, even you see 1857 revolt, some or the other way, people were not happy with the British rule. So there was a lot of discontent on the ground. This discontent created conditions which were necessary for reform. And if you see what Gandhiji did, he was a scientist par excellence. Look at the way he first, at a very small level, right, operated in terms of the Champaran, Ahmedabad mill, or even Bardoli. So at grassroots, he first tested his techniques. He then implemented them, studying the external context in the form of, say, 1921, then it was the civil disobedience, and finally the Quit India movement. So he always was very much observant of the discontent. He used to listen to the people. Then he used to create his own theory, what would work, what would not work, and then he used to try it out. If he feels that it doesn't work, he used to recall it back, study again, go back into his cocoon, study again, and come up with a new theory again, right, at the next time, and wait for the opportune moment. So he had a lot of patience, right? So he waited for opportunities to implement reform. And here is the main learning that we have, that he was observant and he waited for the right opportunity to implement any reform. Now apply it to the present protests that are going on regarding the farm bill in the country. It is a reform, there's no doubt about it. But what we see is totally opposite of this. The reform is not preceded by discontent. It is the other way around. We have reform and then the discontent. So discontent is being interpreted as a consequence of reform, not a cause of it. So this is problematic. This shows that we have not understood the basic message of Gandhi. The way freedom struggle operated, it's not just one example. Think about the 1991 reforms. We think that it was just because of the balance of payment crisis that we were forced to implement reform. But my point is, compare it with other countries which were also similarly facing balance of payment crisis or have faced such crisis in the past and who have gone to IMF. Did they all succeed in making the reforms sustainable? Not exactly. India succeeded. So the point that I'm trying to make is that 1991 reforms, though they may have been caused by the immediate trigger because of the crisis in balance of payments, but there was a lot of discontent in India because of the various restrictive policies of the license Raj that were existing since 2-3 decades before that. So the business class in India was a lot of stifled, economic activity was stifled, there was a lot of corruption in the system, doing business was extremely difficult, and that had created a lot of discontent in the country. So the economists, experts, specialists, the businessmen, everybody wanted change and they were working on it even before 1991. Why our 1991 reforms became sustainable? Because the right policy proposals were present and were waiting for the right moment to be implemented. Just that moment was made available by the crisis of balance of payment that came in 1991. So 1991 presented a window of opportunity where you can get these bold reforms implemented. But the work on the reforms was done much earlier based on the discontent that was generated in the economy because of the restrictive policies of the government at that time. Same is the case with the implementation of RTI, even the Forest Rights Act. So if there is discontent in the society, we need to listen to the people. This discontent should be studied, should be observed, and policies need to be generated beforehand, before you get to the field for implementation. Right? Otherwise, your policy itself will be a cause of discontent. You should understand that any reform is a change in status quo. The interests in the present system are going to resist any change in the status quo. So, without taking everybody in confidence, or without doing the groundwork, if we introduce a reform, the reform itself will be a cause of discontent, as we are seeing in the country now. So, the final takeaway here from this session would be that the presence of discontent on the ground is important. As policymakers or implementers of policy, we need to understand, listen to these people on ground, listen to the people who are in the system, tap into this discontent, understand the causes of this discontent, contextualize them. So one solution at one place cannot be the solution at another place. So contextualize the solution and then implement it, so that the implementation can be swift and without delay. With this, I end this session. Thank you, and I request you to subscribe to this channel, so that the next video, which will come very soon, you will get notification for it. Thank you. Have a nice day.